You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus. That music's been with us for a while. Alex Stein, the creator of the third year bonus music. Hat tip to the old producer of the Mindcast, Alex Stein, out there. Thank you. This is Ryan, or thank you? What? Thank you for listening to another episode of Me and Paranormal You. This is Ryan Singer. I'm your host. We've got a third year bonus today. I want to dive into the legends. I want to dive into origin stories and what do those mean and where do they come from, why they are important. As you know, my origins for the paranormal, I got an interesting comment. I didn't understand exactly what it meant on the YouTube. All of these episodes are going up on YouTube nowadays. So if you just want to listen on YouTube, you can go ahead and do that. If that's how you consume your podcasts. Anyway, some of them have video, some of them do not, but it's still out there on YouTube. We are now part of Spreaker Prime Podcasting. So there are commercials. You probably heard commercials before this. You'll probably hear some more as we go along. Anyway, the point is, I was on one last week. Wasn't I? Oh, if you listen to Languages of the Universe last week, you probably could tell I was on one. That was after I recorded an hour episode and then realized my microphone wasn't working. So I had to re-record and it ended up being a totally different episode. That's just the way these things go. Such is the nature of podcasting. Talking to a friend of mine the other day, he said he almost bought a radio station in Mount Shasta. And I was like, oh my God, can you imagine? I mean, Lemurian radio? I mean, are you kidding me? I don't know if I'm going to Mount Shasta. I think I talked about it last week. Trying to maybe go up to Mount Shasta. It's just not really affordable in a way that I want it to be affordable. I mean, could I go and do it? Probably yes, but sometime next month potentially. I don't know. I mean, just sequester myself into the mountains and initiate contact with Lemurians doing CE5 solo. Does that sound like something that's dangerous? I don't think it's dangerous, but I mean, would I sleep the whole time I was there? Who knows? Maybe I will force myself to go camping. I'm making a road trip starting later this week, and I'll be in North Carolina the 28th, the 30th, and June 1st. Those dates are on the website, ryansingercomedy.com/tour. Anyway, so I'll be doing Asheville on the 28th, Durham on the 30th at Motorco, and June 1st, I will be at Waterline Brewing Company. I'll be at Asheville Beauty Academy on the 28th. I'm very excited about that. I love Asheville. I love Durham. I love Wilmington. I love North Carolina. Should I live there? Should I try to convince the universe and everyone involved in my stratosphere that North Carolina is the best place to live? I don't think that's going to. You just really never know what's going to happen in this world. Last night, there's a lunar eclipse. It's a full moon. It's a full flower moon. I'm outside peeping the full moon. Oh, I go outside to peep on the full moon, right? And it looks like a big chunk's taken out of it. And I think, well, I have to use reading glasses now as of 6 months ago or for whatever time it's been. So my eyesight maybe isn't as good as it used to be at nighttime, because I'm in my 40s. And then I'm like, that's, this isn't, am I getting like, what do they call it? It's awful when people get it. It's like the macro degeneration of the eye and you start seeing like a blind spot in the middle of your vision. It sounds awful. My stepdad is, I think, getting that now. Anyway, it's not great. And I'm thinking, oh, do I have macro degeneration of my eyeball or whatever? And because I'm seeing a spot on the moon, and I'm like, oh my God, you know how when you look into the stars, it's the past, right? We all know that because of, the distance. You don't see what's happening in real time. the further away you are from something. And it's especially, at such great distance. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, something has impacted the moon. I'm not, and listen, I could have Googled what's up with the moon tonight. I could have Googled. I don't have Twitter on my phone. I don't have Facebook on my phone. I try not to have any of that shit too much in my purview. I mean, I live on my laptop for work and other things, editing and things like that. But so I check in, right? But I don't want these things on my phone. Instagram is enough to have on the phone, and even that I'm on the fence about. So I'm thinking I could use the Google and figure out if the moon is, what's up with the moon tonight, and figure out if there's some very readily explainable reason. But I do not do that. Instead, I walk back into the apartment, and I'm like, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. Something's weird with the moon. Something's going on with the moon. Something's going on with the moon. And needless to say, my reaction was a lot more extreme than anyone else's. So in my mind, in about those 5 minutes, I sat out there staring directly at the moon to make sure it wasn't some kind of, optical illusion I was looking at. Had convinced myself that one of two things have happened. The moon has been impacted by a large crater, and a big chunk of it is missing, and we just don't know it yet. And they're not sending off alarm bells and things like that to people's phones because the world is ending in 24 hours tops. At the longest, we've got 24 hours to live. And so they're just like, you know what, fuck it. There's no reason to tell anybody. And I'm like, okay, the world is ending. This is where I die. I die in Culver City, California. And I'm not too far from the beach. I could get to the beach, maybe, and die in a tidal wave. When large pieces of the moon hit the earth, maybe that's the way that I go. The crab goes back into the water. The cancer sign finds the H2O to complete the circle of life. So I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking, well, I don't have any children here, thank God, that are going to die this horrific death. And I'm just like, this is the end. This could be the end. This really could be the end of all things. Why was I worried about all that other stuff? And then I'm like, why was I worried about it? And I start thinking about all the other little things that I was like, stressing out about or whatever. I'm just like, none of it matters. None of it matters. The world's ending because the moon's obviously been impacted by an interstellar object. It's imploding right in front of our eyes. We just can't see it because we're looking at the past. So this is bad, but it's also beautiful in that nothing matters now. Nothing else, good or bad, can happen to anyone on this planet because we'll all be dead in a day. So I went through all of that in about 5 minutes, sitting outside of my balcony, staring at the moon. And then my other thought was, well, maybe there's such a large UFO between the moon and the sun. Maybe there's a fleet of UFOs coming to save us from our impending climate change doom. That the fleet of UFOs that are, making their way to the planet are, again, looking in the past, so they were probably over there. I don't know. What is it? A day ago? Are blocking that. There's so many UFOs. They're casting a shadow onto the moon because there's such a large fleet, just thousands and millions of UFOs coming to, save us, because we all want a savior, don't we? We don't want to take ownership for the planet ourselves. So I'm thinking there's only two options that are available. The moon is imploded and we're all dead in 24 hours, or there's a fleet of UFOs coming to Earth as we speak to blow disclosure out of the water. We'll all know the truth. Hopefully they'll save our planet and not turn us into food. Those are the two options, right? And that's when I go inside. I'm like, you got to get out of here and look at this. The moon's imploded, or there's a fleet of, I didn't say all that. I kind of kept that on the inside. I didn't want all the neighbors, because, there's an alley right there. And so there's all these apartments right across from me, 20 yards away from me. So if I'm out there yelling, oh my God, the moon's imploded, everybody's lights are going to turn on and people are going to be like, what's going on? The crazy guys out there talking about the moon imploding. I don't necessarily think my neighbors think I'm crazy, but you just really never know at this point. I mean, sometimes I'll record the Mindcast at 2 a.m. But I don't really have a lot of shared walls. But we'll leave the window open, So sometimes they hear me just going, I'm on one right now, boy, am I one. And they're probably like, wow, this guy's probably unstable. But little do they know, it's just all in the name of entertaining information, right? That's what is that a good way to describe this program? Is that a good way to describe this program, sir? Well, am I under oath? Well, yes. In the court of public opinion. So yeah, it turns out, and again, I did not Google it. I didn't Google it for the rest of the night. I was just up until couldn't sleep, 3:30 in the morning, thinking there's an implosion of some kind. And then I think at one point I'm informed very gently. Oh, I just looked it up. It's a lunar eclipse. Whew. What a wild ride, right? I mean, lunar eclipses are cool. Not according to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson receiving backlash for smarmy at best, completely intolerable at medium. I don't even want to say a worst. Tweeting about the lunar eclipse being there is absolutely nothing spectacular about a lunar eclipse. I'm paraphrasing. The world decided to respond, apparently, on Twitter with the fast food hamburger restaurant chain, Wendy's, even chimed in with something along the lines of, excuse me, sir, but this is a Wendy's. Or basically like, hey, watch your language in here kind of thing. So people are surprised that Neil deGrasse Tyson was so smarmy and, just a straight up dick about people's excitement about a lunar eclipse. And it's well documented for years on this show, my thoughts and feelings towards the one who calls himself, the most famous spaceman. Anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. But, I'm not going to say I was experiencing Schadenfreude, taking pleasure in other people's misery, because who knows? He loves it. We all know this about the internet. People troll you on the internet. People say awful things to you on the internet because 99% of the time it gets a response in comparison to saying nice things. People don't, find the need to get into a conversation with someone who is, complimenting them or saying something nice about them, but not nearly as often as if someone's trolling or, being hateful, etc. That always gets a response in comparison to a nice thing or a compliment, almost every single time if you had to examine those two things. So people aren't stupid, right? People know that. And so people do that because they know they can actually get into a conversation with someone by, shitting on them or whatever else. And it's, it's not easy. As someone who has been a part of the entertainment world for so many years now, trust me, I get it. It's, somebody just a faceless stranger comments a hateful opinion about your stand-up or whatever else, or your podcast, calling you names or whatever else, someone you've never met in your life, or at least hopefully, and you just want to tell that person to go get fucked. You do. That's a knee-jerk reaction for most people. And, I think I do a pretty good job of, just not even responding. But, some people think the internet's ruined the world, and I'm not going to say that they're wrong, but, you are listening to this because of the internet. So how bad could it be? I got a podcast. Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, I think the internet is ruining the world, but it allows me to monetize my thoughts about the paranormal. So I think it's, it's not all bad. Monetize can you even call it that at this point? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Saying is a great podcast thing. Shoot. What else is there to talk about? Oh God, don't you love when comedians do that line? What else is there to talk about? What, you're not prepared? You don't have something? You're on stage right now. You don't have something to talk about? Then why are you on? Okay, we don't need to. There's no rules in stand-up comedy, so people can say that all day. Just go up and do 7 minutes of like, what else is there to talk about? You know what I was working on this thing. This is new, so it probably won't work. I don't know if I want to. What else can I say about that? Et cetera, et cetera. What was I wanting to talk about? I forget. I didn't bring my drink over. Silly goose. What else? What did I want to talk about? I just really kind of did it, didn't I? Well, is that just like, the loop on that closed so quickly that I literally was just making fun of that, and then I was like, what did I want to talk about? There's a difference between forgetting what you wanted to talk about and being like, well, what else did I want to talk about? Is there a difference though? Oh shit, now I am in a mind wormhole. I'm looping, I'm fucking losing it. Origins. How did it all start? Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. Legends and origins. I canceled my Discovery Plus subscription because the only reason I had it was to watch Expedition Bigfoot. The last few episodes, 6, 7, 8, or whatever, I'm just kind of like, yeah, this is kind of seeming a little bit repetitive now. There doesn't seem to be a lot going on. I get a text message from someone today like, oh my God, did you see last night's episode of Expedition Bigfoot? And I'm just like, which would be episode 9. And I'm just like, of course, this is the way it happens. I buy crypto loses 80% of its value the next day. I cancel Discovery Plus. Expedition Bigfoot has a great episode, right? Is this like, I go to the casino, I never win money. I'm going in a couple of days probably. Who knows? There's a casino somewhere I can go to. Point is, I'm like, oh, go figure. So I reactivate Discovery Plus. And I watch episode 9 of Expedition Bigfoot, which I've been on here saying repeatedly that, it's, one of my favorite shows on TV right now. When it comes to these reality shows or these investigation shows, right? I don't know if they're faking stuff. I can't tell you that. I can, with a pretty level high confidence, that actually would be better than a pretty high level of confidence. I'd much rather have a pretty level high confidence in saying that I believe that the investigators on this program are unawares if there is any hoaxing happening. That doesn't mean there isn't hoaxing happening, but I don't believe they're awares of it. I just like saying awares instead of aware. Is that a problem for you? Do I need to change? We all need to change. Do we? Do we really all need to? Sometimes. Wait, so we all of us need to change definitively, but only sometimes. Okay, we don't need to have that conversation. I don't think it's hoaxed. I think it's a well-made program, and episode 9 was better. So I'm looking forward to next week's, which it comes out on Sunday night. Having said that, they get into the origin of Bigfoot a little bit, right? They very, very briefly touch on this. And then I start thinking, I'm like, well, that's interesting. Talking about the man who first coined the phrase Bigfoot, who was a writer in Eureka, California. Then I'm thinking origins. Oh, okay, this is where the story came from, and he briefly references how it's become so big today. It wouldn't have, he was at the start of it becoming what it is today, like a worldwide phenomenon. And I start thinking about stories. And I'm like, oh, this reminds me of Outer Range, which is an Amazon Prime program, which I finished. Only 8 episodes. Some of the best 8 hours of your life if you give it a shot. I highly recommend checking out Outer Range. A couple weeks ago, I interviewed the whole from the show on the debut episode of Late Night on the Astral Plane, which there will be more of those patron only coming up here. I got one coming up here, I think next week, and for the patrons. And so that late night paranormal talk show where everything is real, that's going to be a patron only thing. And patreon.com/Ryan Singer. You can check that out. Get in over there. So I start thinking about the story of Outer Range. And what's interesting is it draws from a few different things that are, in the zeitgeist. They're in the mind, the consciousness of pop culture currently, obviously. And because so much paranormal stuff is fucking everywhere now, it's almost like you can't get away from it even if you wanted to. It's becoming more and more real in the entertainment space. But you still don't see a ton of comedy. You do see some attempts at comedy regarding this. The Pentaveret, which is a new Netflix show with one of my all-time favorite comedic minds, Mike Myers. Kind of about the cabal conspiracy theory kind of based comedy. Very over the top, very, very ludicrous and ridiculous. You have Outer Range, which is a drama, more of a family story than it is a paranormal story. And it's very good, though, under the backdrop of the paranormal and the unexplainable, the supernatural, the scientific. Very, very engaging. It gets you. Josh Brolin, married to my gal, Diane Lane. Try not to hold it against him. He's amazing in this show. The acting is incredible. So I start thinking about the origins of the bits and pieces of some of these elements of that story, right? And where they come from. And it really drives home the point that examining the origins can give us so much insight no matter how far away from that point of origin we have traveled. And we're going to talk about that more in a second. And we're back. That was the commercial part. We're talking about origins of legend, origin of stories, and it reminds me of my origin story when it comes to being really, really into the paranormal and having my first major experience of the paranormal many years ago. And that is why that YouTube comment that just came in yesterday on last week's episode struck me as so funny. Let me read it for you because I'm not even sure I understand what it means. From Jay. Bro, what the hell did you delete during the shape-shifting episode? It's been like 5 years. Let me know what she said about the universe. She's going to have the tech in 6 years, LOL. And I don't know what tech he's talking. I don't know what tech he's talking about. What is she going to have? I mean, does she say 2028 in that episode? Obviously I can't remember a 2-hour conversation. So, it's funny. And the funny thing about that interview, and I don't know if I've talked about this. During that interview, she said, do you want to know the secrets to everything in the universe? And I say, yes. Roughly, this is the conversation we're having. And she goes, okay, well, you have to stop recording or edit this out. And so I edited it out, obviously. Now, what's interesting later is not that much later in life, as far as time passing by, the raw file of that interview, which I always kept, which I thought I kept under like safeguard and key, was stolen in the middle of the night. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't stolen. I lost the memory card somewhere in Glendale, California. On the streets of Glendale, California is my best guess. maybe a year, 2 years after the interview or something, I always kept the file that had the complete unedited interview with her. And that memory card is gone. It is nowhere to be found. Trust me, I've never looked for a small thing, a tiny memory card. I've never looked for an object for as much time or spent as much energy as I did trying to find that memory card. It's gone. I had to just accept the fact that it's gone. And currently, I have to accept the fact that I don't even remember really what the secret was, right? Because it's been years since we had that conversation. And, I've had hundreds of conversations in the meantime. And the unedited version of that interview, which I always kept just on that memory card, I didn't even download it onto my computer because I didn't want it to be somewhere, right? That could get stolen, or I don't know who's going to steal it, right? Who's going to steal? No one's going to steal it. But the point is, it's gone. And I spent days, one might even say weeks, and then intermittently I would restart the search 3 months later and look for it again, knowing that I had to have had it. I tried to retrace my steps. A friend of mine had to come over for an interview. I walked her back to her car afterward, and that memory card was in my pocket, I believe. And so I walked the streets of Glendale for a couple weeks, just staring at the sidewalk and in people's yards, seeing if the memory card had fallen out, and it was there. Nowhere to be found. So, sorry, Jay. I can't tell you what she said about the universe because it's gone. It's gone, my friend, and I apologize, although I pretty much remember what she said. Did I bury the lead there that I totally remember because certain things are said to you that you'll just never forget? That was one of them, among other things that did not make the interview. But, obviously there's, you have a responsibility to protect people's privacy and also honor their requests. If they want something taken out of an interview, you do it. That's just the way that's just the way things operate, right? At least where I come from. But it made me think about my origins, and, I've been playing around with some of the audio as well for this new series as I try to lay out my story for this documentary series I'm making. Try to give people who have never heard of me some context about why comedians into the paranormal, et cetera, et cetera. And it's made me thinking about this a lot. It's made me think about this a lot lately. And origins are important because the origin of something, like I don't know if I said this already, but it will often shine, a very bright light on the thing itself after a great time has passed. And in this case, it's the fascination, endless in nature, of the paranormal and seeking answers and wanting to know more. And with such a profound first experience, it makes perfect sense to me why I'm here where I am today. Still doing this, still looking for some kind of clue about truth in the universe, and specifically when it comes to the paranormal, and like where is it all coming from, and why, and how, and what, and when, and I think when is very, very fuzzy because, time is a construct. Ugh. Gosh, I haven't worn a watch in years. Why? Because it's always time. It's always time, isn't it? So, thinking about the origins of, some of the elements that take place in outer range. I don't want to give you any spoilers, so I'm not really going to go into that. But also Bigfoot, the origins of Bigfoot, and this, the stories that have been told that have shaped the popular, or the mythos surrounding these creatures, Sasquatch, Oma, many different names, the wild man. All these things could be related. shadow walkers, all kinds of things, right? And there's so many different origin points. This is where it gets interesting with a legend or a phenomena. You have so many different origin points you can uncover and pinpoint, and they all vary due to cultural differences, oral history, traditions, I guess terrain, climate, etc., and just personality of groups of people who have these stories, right? Because our personalities differ in so many ways that truly affects the way a story is told. I try to use a sense of humor when I convey stories. That's not to say that I haven't told some, scary stories before that maybe they're not heavy on comedy, that's for sure. But if you come to a stand-up comedy show, you're going to see a lot more comedy. You're going to see a lot heavier comedy than maybe listening to the podcast. Although at times that could be argued, I suppose, depending on how many characters pop in. But so there's all these things that contribute to the differences in a story. And coupled with the fact that they can stack on top of each other when something is truly a phenomena, in my opinion, you will have different groups of people who are not connected to one another telling a story about it. See, that's one of the most compelling parts of Bigfoot. You have all of these different groups of people who are not connected, who have similar stories of essentially the same thing, the same creatures. Now, how does that happen? If they are not real, does it come from archetypes that are in the human mind? And so there are only so many different forms these stories can take when trying to explain something that's unknown. So we create these characters to convey meaning or represent forces of nature that aren't necessarily a physical creature, but we use these creatures to embody these forces to tell the story so we can more easily understand the lesson or try to wrap our brain around or make sense of the natural world around us. That is obviously very possible. And it's also very exciting to think about how we do that. I mean, you could be dismissive of paranormal phenomena because of this. And you could say people are just telling stories about forces and energies in the universe that are real, but they're not these things running around. But because of the archetypes in the human mind, they've all taken similar forms, and the stories sound familiar, even though groups of people are disconnected from one another. It is only natural and it is inevitable that these similar stories will be told as the human creature tries to understand the universe around it. That's really fucking cool if that's the case, right? And that's worst case scenario for the truth of Bigfoot being real. Let's just say that. That's worst case scenario, which is really amazing. I don't believe it's explained away like that. I don't believe it's that easy to explain it away because people have seen these creatures with their eyes. If no one had ever seen one, no one ever, that would be different. But we have traditions, stories, oral history, eyewitness accounts, encounters, experiences, images, footage, recordings of audio. You throw that on top of all of the oral traditions, histories, and stories. And now you're really dealing with something, aren't you? Now you're talking about a phenomena. You're talking about, talk about bringing reality home to meet the parents, right? Hey, parents, this is reality. And it's a fucking Bigfoot, right? Walking through that door, pinning a corset onto your lapel or what have you, and whatnot, or whatever. That's interesting. And it makes it very plausible to me, right? My hope is that, there is irrefutable evidence of the creature at some point, and we all just accept that Bigfoots are real. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson can tweet, "There's nothing more unspectacular than a Bigfoot sighting." He would. He would. So what can we learn from the origins that shed a very bright light on the current day story? Well, in the case of Bigfoot and Sasquatch, I think the big lesson we can learn from the origins of this story, and one doesn't need to be deeply familiar with all of the different stories that go back hundreds and, 1,000 years. But if you want to look at it from the materialistic, modern, scientific point of view, origin, which would be reportings, newspaper articles, etc., we are having people telling eyewitness reports of encounters with these creatures. And flash forward 60 years later, 70 years later, people are still telling tales of their encounters with these creatures. It still happens. So, it's like where you start, you end up. The irrefutable evidence part is what's missing at this point. But as we go further and further along, I think we are going to understand in a deeper way that there's a lot more to this story than just, the missing link or some kind of ape-type creature running around the forest. That's my opinion. And friends of mine disagree with that opinion, and I disagree with their opinion. And guess what? They're just opinions. And you can still be friends, and you can still have fun conversations about that. Time will tell who is right about that, and who cares, right? It doesn't even matter. I'd love to be wrong, and there's irrefutable evidence of Bigfoot being an ape-like creature that's running around that's just flesh and blood only, with no paranormal phenomena connected to it. I'd love to be wrong about that, because then Bigfoot would be real and everybody would know it, and it wouldn't be crazy anymore. I'd be fine with that. The cryptozoology world would get a boost and start reorganizing their efforts to find more of them, or maybe shifting their focus to other cryptids. I'm not sure what would really happen. I think if one was found, people would be hot and heavy to find more. And then maybe they could be put on the endangered species list. Who knows? I don't run the Forestry Service or whatever government agency would be in charge of something like that. But when you look at a show like, whether Open Range or the Pentaveret, and the Pentaveret deals mostly with conspiracies, right? And the New World Order, et cetera, et cetera. It is taking stories and elements of their story from pop culture and from the world around us. And when you look at the origins of some of these stories, you start to understand better the bigger picture. And as we've talked ad nauseum on this show about, which always bears repeating in my opinion, so much of the New World Order and Jewish people control the banks, blah, blah, blah. So much of that stems from the anti-Semitic propaganda, which is completely false and not real, the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which is one of probably the most poisonous documents ever circulated. You know, somebody over here is going to be like, what about the Bible? It's like, okay, let's take it easy. In my opinion, probably one of the most poisonous documents ever circulated and believed by people were the Protocols. But you can see all the different spaces in the world, specifically of the conspiracy world, where the Protocols still have a pretty good stronghold, right? And unfortunately, a lot of it is, you know, it ties into white supremacy and in a lot of avenues there. It's all very, 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 very complicated, but the origins are important. And so for me, when it comes to the paranormal and the exploration of such, having experienced someone shapeshift in front of them, and witnessing it on a second occasion, I think it's easier to understand that I really don't have a limit on thinking that Bigfoots could be traveling through portals. I've seen a human being, who is a human being, by the way, shapeshift. So what else, right? You're going to tell me something else isn't possible? Not to mention conversations I've had with people that I've met over the years who are 100% humble and grounded human beings who live with phenomena on a regular basis and understand that the world is not what we all think it is, at least in the modern scientific viewpoint. And there is an element of that original interview with the woman who could shapeshift, Experience 76. It should be in the catalog if you want to go back and listen to it, where we talk about this very specific thing. And I believe the question she asks is, then what? Once you understand the rules and the laws of the universe aren't real, then what? Question mark. I believe is almost exactly what she says. And that is the ultimate question, my friends. Then what? Because if Bigfoot is found to be real with irrefutable evidence, accepted globally as a creature, then what? If death is understood not to be real in physical form, then what? And I think what most of us who are really into the paranormal, or even casually into paranormal topics and reading or programming, and even if you just have your baby toe dipped into this world of the paranormal, I think the exciting part of it all is that we understand, at least in a hopeful part of our brain, that the answer to then what is, and like I said, the hopeful part of our brain is a better world, is a world that has less boundaries, that has fewer limitations, a world where the imagination once again can be lit afire about the possibilities of traveling through time, through space, interdimensionally. There seriously could be no limit to what we achieve once we are equipped with the knowledge that there is so much more around us that is achievable and real. I think that sums it up. Asheville, May 28th. So that's, 2 weeks from now. less than 2 weeks from now. Saturday night in Asheville at Asheville Beauty Academy. May 30th at Motorco Music Hall in Durham. God, I love that place. Deborah Ronan set up the show. First time I came through there years ago through Deb. What an amazing show. Tickets are available on the website. You can click the link there. Go to motorco.com, I think. Waterline Brewery or Waterline Brew Company in Wilmington, North Carolina. So excited to be coming back to Wilmington. It's been too many years since I've been back to Wilmington. Love that city. Love North Carolina. Love it, love it, love it there. Please come out to a show. I'd love to see you there. We're going to have a really good time. And then I've got more dates in the summer. I've got July. I've got August. I'm doing dates with Dave Stone, very funny comedian, one of my best buds of the Boogie Monster podcast. We're doing some dates together in Cincinnati. He'll be with me at Go Bananas. Then we're doing Buffalo. Never been to Buffalo to do comedy. Philadelphia. Only been there once with Austin Lucas. And some other dates. I'll be in Morgantown again in July. I'll be in Louisville in July. I'll be in Mason City Limits. I'll be doing the Cambry House in October with Karen Rontowski. I'll be in Detroit at the Independent Comedy Club in October, working that club again right before Halloween. So that's always going to be a fun gig. Give me a follow on social media, all that good stuff. RyanSingerComedy.com/tour. TOUR. That's how you spell tour. Tour. However you want to say it. That's, info is there. More dates coming in soon. I think I'm going to be doing some other shows in West Virginia as well. My buddy Cody's setting those up with Dave Stone. So, yeah, I hope to see you at a live show. If not, I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.